We appreciate you watching and listening to The Dead Jeff Show. Please like and subscribe and tune in for more videos. It's another great day to be alive on The Dead Jeff Show. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jeff. That's Nick. And we welcome you into The Dead Jeff Show. Now, the maestro has decided to go back behind the scenes, and be our edit guy and our clip guy and our social media post guy, and he'll be on from time to time. So those of you who are fans of the maestro, he's not gone. He's just really busy in his life right now. And so we will take as much maestro as we can get, but he will be the one chopping up clips and doing all that stuff and occasionally appearing. So shout out to the maestro. Nick, how was your weekend, man?
Oh man, you know what? This is the first weekend, and I can't tell you how long that I did not do a lot.
Those are some of the
I
best
really,
ones.
oh man, I can't tell you, it's been so long. Like legitimately, it's probably been 6, 7 months. I'm not exaggerating. Whether it's work, whether it's something with the kid, wife, family, something. And I took maybe a couple phone calls yesterday from work. And a good one I got this morning is I got a chance to go up at church and help out with the water baptisms that we did this weekend.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I got to serve and kind of help some families, just kind of host them sort of thing. And that was really, really awesome. So those kind of things we welcome. But, it just has really been a pretty lazy weekend, man. Really, really enjoyed it. Um, what
That's
about you? I
awesome.
know you had a little special something going on this weekend.
Yeah, it was Saturday was my birthday, but it also was my youngest daughter's birthday. So she was born on my birthday, which is kind of a special deal. And
Yeah.
so we had a combined birthday party with family and extended family on Saturday night, and it was fantastic. A lot of fun, just playing games, hanging out, and doing that kind of stuff. But earlier in the day, me and my wife and the maestro Luke, we went out to Push Start Play, which we've talked about on this show before. It's an arcade. It's like the biggest arcade in the country, I believe. And they just expanded to even make it bigger, and it was awesome. There's a lot of flooding back memories, of all these video games I used to play as a kid, and I love pinball, so I'd go out there and play the pinball machines. But what a great time it was at Push Start Play. And if you haven't seen our video about them, they're not paying me to say this. These guys are friends of mine. And so I frequent this place as much as I can. And we had a great time. I spent about a little over 3 hours there on Saturday. And my
Nice.
daughter had a brunch before that. So it was a busy, busy Saturday. And we celebrated our birthdays. And man, I got to tell you, the maestro and my youngest daughter, who was sharing a birthday, Olivia, with me, they got me a cameo. Have you ever gotten a cameo?
I have not, but I did one for my wife, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, this cameo was from Chris Jericho, who I'm a big fan of Chris Jericho, and I love the way he trash talk and all the stuff he did with Stephanie McMahon back in the day, and
Yep.
Kevin Owens. That was my favorite. You just made the list.
The list,
Well,
yep.
this cameo, it was about a little over 2 minutes long, something like that. And Chris Jericho, he tried to butter me up in the beginning, and then he kind of cut a promo on me. And man, I will tell you what, it was very cool to hear him talking about me
Yeah.
and cutting a promo on me, and I just loved it, man. I know that these have been around for a while, but this is the first one I've ever received. So shout out to the Maestro and Olivia for really coming through with the cameo from Chris Jericho. Nothing like making the list, and he put that in there. So he told me I was the world champion. He was a 9-time world champion, but I was the world champ of falling asleep on the couch. It was awesome. So no, it was a great birthday weekend, and man, the celebration doesn't stop because we go right into Cowboys free agency. It's like Christmas and
Yep.
my birthday all rolled up in one. I really nerd out over this stuff, and I don't know really why, because the Cowboys don't usually get active in this stuff with free agency, but it's that hope that we always talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, we can make our team better. We can take steps to get back to the playoffs and maybe an outside shot at a run at the Super Bowl. But this one, man, this one's going to be exciting. I just have a feeling based on the way Jerry's been talking. So I'm looking forward to come out of my birthday weekend with my daughter Olivia and myself sharing a birthday, right into Cowboys free agency. But it took a little bit of a disappointing start, honestly. Um, the Max Crosby fallout. We did not land Max Crosby. The stinking Ravens landed Max Crosby, gave up the 14th pick in this year's draft and their first round pick next year for Max Crosby. Um, Now the Cowboys reportedly were right there in the hunt. They offered 12, a second round pick in 2027 next year, and kind of put Osa Odigizua in the mix in this trade. And of course, the Ravens went with the 2 first round picks, which you can't blame them. But I know there's a lot of back and forth here. Did the Cowboys do enough? Did they do just enough to become the bridesmaid? What were your thoughts on the Cowboys' activity with Max Crosby and where he ultimately ended up?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy birthday again. It was a big deal, and man, Chris Jericho. Not we also have a wrestling podcast for those that don't know. We shoot it once a month after major events, major what used to be called pay per views, now called PLEs, premium live events. And we're both huge wrestling fans. Chris Jericho, first ever undisputed heavyweight champion back when they combined the companies, and that's a big deal, man. That's pretty cool. So happy birthday, and that's awesome. Good job on Luke and Olivia for coming through.
Thank
Um,
you.
as far as the Crosby thing, here's the thing, and I know I'm based on what I've read so far, I'm gonna be probably in the minority here a little bit. You have not given me your thoughts, so I'm a little curious, but I'm okay with this. And I look at it kind of from two standpoints. One being you gave it a what I think is a really good shot, right? You were to me 12. They got 14, so 12 is probably not too much, but I don't love that, but okay, 12-2 and Osa. To me, that feels like, hey, man, that's a good foot forward. That's not just like oh, we can say we tried. Like that's a legitimate offer. Because Osa's been really solid for the last couple of years, and still on a pretty good contract. So, yeah, I think they gave it a good shot, but they didn't give up the farm. I am personally happy with how this worked out. We'll get into some free agency later, but I think depending on who you end up with, if you can get somebody in free agency and not have sacrificed any capital and potentially have saved some money, because Max Crosby is a 30 million plus player for the next 3 years. That's not cheap, man. Like that,
Right.
I get that that's not the 47 Micah, but that's some money. So I'm actually okay with this. I think I would have loved to have Max for the 1-2 and Osa. I would have probably been like, oh, maybe a little too much, but I would have been happy. I'm happier with the way it turned out.
Well, that is interesting because there are two very, different takes out there. And one of them says, well, who are you going to get at 12 and 20 that's going to be more productive than Max Crosby, which I understand that school of thinking. But we
Hmm.
also have to factor in that Max Crosby is over 30, coming off of an injury, and we don't know, where that will head. Maybe he's productive for 1 to 3 more years, maybe just 1 to 2 more years, maybe longer than that. It's a gamble, right? So you're basically kind of going, hey, where's the value here? So if we get somebody at 12 and 20, that's obviously two different positions that we can maybe shore up in the defense or possibly offensive line. But I think you have to go, okay, what's the Cowboys drafting history here, right? You have to weigh that into effect. Um, they're not just one player away, which those people that were clamoring for Max Crosby saying, I'll give up 12 and 20. Let's just get Max Crosby in here because his production will outweigh that. You can't argue against that based on what he's done. But here's where I land. I think we're always poking at Jerry in the front office to get involved in these things and go get things done. And so for me, I landed like I would have been okay giving up the first pick, and I may have been okay giving up first one this year and one next year, possibly, banking on how well we'll do. But I think this could be a blessing in disguise in the long run because Max Crosby is a terrific player. And as much as, as talked about him, I think that we would have done well to have him on our team. But then you're going back to go, okay, look, if we didn't sign Micah, there's a big money gap between him and Micah. So that makes sense that we're going to go trade him. It's not like, well, let's give up 2 1s and it's just like the Micah deal all over again, right? So I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but here's where I'll go. I'm going to land the plane. I think I'm okay too. I think with the options that you have out there at defensive end, and maybe not the most obvious where everyone's jumping to Trey Hendrickson. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I'm okay with this too, because I think the next 2 days will determine where those picks go, 12 and 20. Like if we can get a linebacker and a safety signed in free agency and possibly maybe a second tier or bottom first tier defensive end, then I think that this is going to be okay. I don't know that it's sexy to say, hey, go all in, get Max Crosby. But then you're kind of in the same position that you said you didn't want to be in with Micah, right? So I
Mhm.
think I'm okay with it too, based on what's available out there, and this team is not one player away, and every level of defense needs help.
Yeah, 100%. And just you mentioned Max Crosby's kind of production and where he's at. Just want to add a little context statistically there. We reference a lot on this show, PFF. We understand and we've talked about in previous episodes kind of some of the pitfalls that come along with the PFF grading style, some of the things that may be looked at, not looked at, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, it's a great barometer, right? Because if you're saying it's flawed data, well, it's the same flawed data for everybody. So it gives you a pretty good idea. So last year, Max Crosby ranked 15th among all edge rushers, which is great. You know, I mean, there's it's obviously very, very solid. Um, some of the other things that kind of poke out at when you say that is if you look at his contract, he'll be 29 next year. He's got 30 million owed to him next year, and then essentially 30 million the year after that, and then you can get out of his contract. So basically 2 more years of guaranteed $30 million before you can get away from him. And to your point, he will be over 30 years old by that point.
Yeah.
So just from a statistical standpoint, you've got a top 15 edge rusher over the last 5 years. You'd probably call him a top 10 just because of the production that he's had in that same period, but you're also paying a premium for him. If you look in terms of edge rushers being paid, he's also in the top 10 there. So just some context for it. I think, again, like you, I would not have been upset to have Max Crosby. The last thing I'll say is if you look at what the rookie pay scale pays 12 and 20, so for both combined, you're looking at 4.5 for 12 and you're looking at 3.6 for 20. Theoretically, you're talking about two impact starters if we draft well, which Christian Parker don't fail us. Then you've got 7.8, 7.9, call it $8 million versus 30. So, you know, just some numbers for some food for thought out there.
Well, seeing those numbers, it's here's what you're betting on. You're betting on that the Cowboys will turn around their terrible defensive drafting history and find players at 12 and 20 that can contribute right away. You're also banking on that they're going to find another defensive end edge rusher in free agency, a Jalen Phillips or a Mafe, or somebody that can maybe not rise to the level of production from Max Crosby, but them paired with the other two players that they got at 12 and 20 can make all the difference in the world for the defense. Now, superstars don't come available very often, and I get that way of thinking too. And so if the Cowboys would have done this trade, I think I also would have been okay with it. And I hate to be the guy that's down the middle and wishy-washy, but team building is a art, not just a science, right? It's part of, hey, we can
Hmm.
go this way and it yields these fruits. We can go this way and it yields these fruits. We can go this way and yield no fruit. So I think that it's kind of an art and science mixed together. So I can't kill the front office for this. And I know everyone was urging, just make it happen, just get him in here because a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, I guess. And when there's no guarantee that anybody
Hmm.
else will sign here in free agency. And this is what you said earlier, last week and weeks before, is like, just because we're going to try doesn't mean we'll get them, right? Either via trade or free
Yep.
agency.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is the one thing that we continue to talk about as we move to this. I'm going to call it the new and improved Cowboys offseason plan because this is very different. It's felt different. It looks different. And that can all be true. And yet we can still come out of this thing no different than we have in the last few years, which is our own draft picks, of course, but not really a lot of talent coming in from outside, either via trade, either post a pre-draft or post, or through free agency. And I think both things can be true. It can look, feel, act different. We can have a different sense of, man, we're really trying out there. but then we can get to training camp and be like, well, we got a lot of rookies that we're hoping can perform, and guys from last year that can be better in this new system. Um, and that's okay. I mean, I think we have to accept that that could be a reality just based on the market and based on kind of whether the Cowboys are able to actually get free agents or if they're just being used to help people get money.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. But I will say this: I am scared of the Cowboys' draft history when it comes to defense. I am scared because there's only about 13 round one graded players in this draft, so that could kind of push you the other way to go. Let's just go all in and get Max Crosby. But I think this was the right
Hmm.
kind of decision for now and protecting our future because this is probably a TBD type decision, right? Let's see what happens in free agency. Let's see what happens at 12 and 20 before we crucify the Cowboys front office for not getting it done. And some have already. They've come up short.
Yep.
But I don't think when we went into this Max Crosby trade situation, I don't think anybody thought there would be a team to give up 2 first round picks, let alone one as high as 14 that the Ravens gave. If you were at the bottom part of the draft and you're a good team, maybe you could see somebody giving up 2 first round picks for Max Crosby. But I didn't think he would get two
Yep.
first round picks. So that kind of surprised me. But hey, the Ravens, they do stuff like this, and they leave the offensive side of the ball to struggle. It's the opposite here in Dallas. We got the offensive side of the ball, but leave the defense to struggle.
No, it's true. And look, just real quick on the Ravens, and obviously we're not going to spend a ton of time on other teams, but I think this is one of those off seasons when you make a move to come off of a coach like John Harbaugh. Um, you got to start making some splash, and you better get some talent. And I know offensively, there's a lot of rumors around maybe Tyreek Hill, maybe some other of the receivers that are out there. And I think this is a great signal for them and that fan base that hey, we recognize that this is going to be different. This is going to look different, and I think this is exactly what you have to do if you're in that situation.
Well, and for the Cowboy fans that really, 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 really wanted Max Crosby, don't lose hope just yet. Don't lose hope just yet as
Yeah.
far as what we're going to get from a pass rushing standpoint and this defense. Stay with us a few more days. Let's see what happens in free agency on Monday and Tuesday as you got the legal tampering period before they can sign on Wednesday, and let's see what we do. And let's just
Mhm.
not jump to conclusions like here we go again. Cowboy fans, let's relax just for a few more days and let's see what happens. But to me, this could just be a situation that the trades you don't make could be blessings in disguise, and I have a feeling that it will turn out that way.
Yeah, completely agree. Hard stop, and it feels like this off season's been going on forever, man. We're barely a month in it. Literally, Super Bowl is February 8th. It's March 8th. Like this feels like it's been a lifetime with everything that's happened. It's been 30 days, man. This is a marathon. We got to just
Been
just check
exciting.
ourselves just a little bit. Be a little patient. Yeah, don't get excited, and let's just see how this goes, man. We've been through a lot of these now. Let's see what happens.
Well, we like to be on that emotional roller coaster with the Cowboys. And speaking of that, real quick, I wanted to mention that they did officially put the second round tender on Brandon Aubrey, the A bomb.
Hmm.
That's what we nicknamed him last season. That's a $5.7 million tender, and the Cowboys have a right of first refusal to match any deal. If they don't, they decide not to match a deal, then they get a second round pick for Brandon Aubrey. Are you worried about this? Are you concerned that they may lose Brandon Aubrey?
Now I gotta be honest, man. I kind of look at this as a little bit of a win-win, only because I think if you get, if a team offers at 6.5, 6.6, somewhere in that range, Butker is currently the highest paid at 6.4. If rumors are to believe, that's around the ballpark that the Cowboys were offering, just making him slightly the highest paid kicker. But I feel like the Cowboys, and this is not the team that you want to be, but I feel like it's a little bit of like those teams generally just always find these players really well. Like this position always happens to be taken care of for these different teams. Packers have quarterback, unfortunately for the Cowboys, I think it's the kicker. Like, I think that's the one position that if you look over the history, like Nick Folk's best years were here, then Dan Bailey,
Yeah.
and we got, obviously Aubrey. So, like, if we end up with a second rounder, of which we currently don't have one, and you go out and I'm just going to trust the special teams and Will McClay scouting teams to go find a kicker. Okay, I'll take a $2 million kicker and a second round pick as opposed to Aubrey. Like if that's a hypothetical trade, sure, that's good. That's good for me because we better not be kicking field goals. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not concerned at this point. I think that it would take a lot for our team to come and offer him, 7 to $10 million. And we've offered him apparently like 7, 7.5. So they would match anything probably near that. So I'm not concerned yet because I think the A bomb is a huge weapon for us. I, but let's see what happens. I'm not as casual as you are about we can find another kicker because we've been through some kicking issues here in Dallas and we've seen it play out in other areas, other teams in the NFL. And that's one guy you don't want to have to be concerned about when you send him out there because unfortunately, a lot of drives end with kicks. Well, every drive ends in a kick or a turnover or it's a punt,
Right.
or it's an extra point or it's a field goal. And yes, less field goals is ideal,
Yeah.
but this guy's a weapon, and I don't want him to get away. We need that sense of security when he steps on the field. Now, as we said before, when it comes to the Cowboys and free agencies, they haven't been big players as far as signing free agents, but it always seems that their name comes up in negotiations for other teams. Maybe agents and players use the Cowboys as leverage to get more money from other teams. But if you look now about all the people that are rumored to be on the Cowboys' radar and Cowboys are going to go after this free agent and that free agent. Even in years past, it's always been that way, right? Whether it's wishful Cowboy fans or agents trying to pump up their players' value. Do you think that anytime the Cowboys are mentioned in negotiations, that drives the value up for that player that's mentioning them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think because other teams, and this is one of those things that would work for the Cowboys if they would be a little more active in free agency. But I think there's an implied value beyond the contract numbers, and not even implied at this point. It's obviously stated. Put the star on your helmet. You get endorsements. You're coming to a no income or no state income tax, and then the things that it does for you after your career naturally teams are going to have to come up just a little bit in that. If I'm just random team A and I'm offering 5 for 50, and Dallas comes in and offers 5 for 50, that ain't the same. It's just naturally not the same deal for a variety of reasons. So absolutely, I think anytime that's the case, and I think some of these agents and some of these kind of bigger teams are probably shrewd in knowing that you've got to kind of work that system. You've got to use it to our benefit wherever we can. You got to use it for leverage if you're a player wherever you can. And I think that's just the unnecessary, or I'm sorry, the necessary problem with being the most popular franchise in the sport.
Well, and I think even if the Cowboys aren't trying to sign free agents, that's what I'm kind of referring to is like the agent, the player, the media always loop the Cowboys into, oh,
Uh-huh.
well, the Cowboys are interested in this player and that player and this player. Oh, look out. And then the history says they don't really sign any of them. And so it's
Yep.
it's it's such a bargaining chip for agents to mention the Cowboys. Oh, well, we're talking to the Cowboys. Oh, and I'm sure it's easy for NFL execs to verify certain things, but it always
Yeah.
just seems to be, as a fan, disappointing that the Cowboys are always mentioned but never sign a really top-notch free agent, rarely. I mean, I'm going back to when we got Dion away from the 49ers, how huge that was,
Hmm.
right? And of course, that's kind of before the salary cap and all that stuff started creeping in, or right when it started creeping in. So you just think
Yep.
about, if I'm an agent, if I'm a player, I'm like, hey, mention the Cowboys. Hey, reach out to the Cowboys. Just so even if we don't have to lie, let's just reach out and drive up this number. And I think you're going to see that a lot this year. I mean, every big name free agent has been mentioned it for the Cowboys on the defensive
Uh-huh.
side of the ball, and maybe rightfully so. They should be, but I just find it interesting that every conversation that you have about any free agent on defense has mentioned the Cowboys. We can't sign everybody.
No, no. Yeah, clearly. And then beyond that, to your point, is very rarely do they, spend any sort of big money, or really beyond that is also the long term deal, right? Especially in the last few years, to look at some of these running back signings that they've had, kind of toward the end of free agency or even in season free agent acquisitions. They're usually 1-year deals. It's usually, kind of a prove it kind of deal situation. Javonte Williams is the one that immediately comes to mind that they then go ahead and resign, of course. But yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and for sure, I think attach my name to the Cowboys. Let some media person. If I'm a player, the best thing I got to see is media company A saying I'm a top target of the Cowboys. Hey, man,
Yeah.
I didn't say it. That's just what's out there. So, I'm certain that some of these, the Micah's agents of the world are absolutely using that to their advantage whenever they can.
Well, and the most popular free agent that we kind of missed out on, or actually, yeah, I think he was free agent. He was, or maybe it's Derrick Henry, right? That wasn't a trade. That was
Yeah, free
free
agent.
agent,
Uh huh.
right? Yeah, free agent.
Nope, free
So
agency. That's right.
hopefully Max Crosby doesn't end up like Derrick Henry, where, dadgummit, we should have signed him, right? Pony up the
Yeah,
money, Jerry.
yeah.
I hope that's not what we're dealing with. But I thought it was interesting just to take a look at how the Cowboys can drive up value, not just for their franchise, but for players trying that are free agents. And I think we'll see a lot of that this free agent cycle. Now, before we get into free agent targets and maybe what we would like to see, I came across an article while I
Hmm.
was researching free agents from blogging The Boys, and it talked about pitfalls to avoid in free agency. And there's a couple that I wanted to bring up here because I found them really interesting, right? And the first one is talking about the pass rusher coming off a big year. And in this article on blogging The Boys, they talk about there's 10 of the 16 highest paid free agent pass rushers from 2024. Like they had the 2024 season, they were signed. I think only 3 of them really had a production improvement over that year. I thought that was pretty incredible, right? Um, and they talked about that historically pass rushers coming off a big year in terms of sacks tend to regress the following year when you sign them, right?
Hmm.
And the pass rushers who come off big performances that the teams pay them in 2026 like it's still 2025 for that production that they did. And, Jerry historically did this early on. He paid people for past performance and not the
Hmm.
value they can hold forward. But I found it interesting that out of 16 of the top paid pass rushers, only Josh Sweat, um, Demarcus Lawrence, and Von Miller really significantly increased their sack total um, last year from the previous year. So that's something to consider as we're thinking about these defensive ends that are coming off big years. And we've talked about one, Max Crosby, and there's another one, Trey
Hmm.
Hendrickson, that is coming off injury, but not necessarily a huge season. But what do you think about that one?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, right? I don't think I would have probably put that together on my own. So I think, shout out to blogging with the boys for kind of a little deep cut there. It makes me a little nervous. And so the first thing I'm looking at here is what kind of season did Trey Hendrickson have last year? Just out of curiosity. But you're right, there was some injuries there, obviously. Only had 9 solo tackles and 4 sacks. So to say
Yeah.
that there's been improvement on that, obviously that would be pretty easy. But I think, look, man, I think here's the other thing too, and I don't know what the actual number is now, but there's the stat, of course, about the average NFL career being 3.5 seasons or whatever that is. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I don't think edge is somewhere where you really think of that as much. It kind of seems like if you can be a really good edge, it kind of feels like they have longer careers. So very interesting for sure. I don't think it really scares me off of any of these guys too much. My concern had always been around the type of money that you're going to pay a Hendrickson or Mafe or Phillips or any of these guys. It's like, what kind of money are they going to command? That's always been my concern, regardless of production. Um, the blogging with the boys article there probably just gives me a little bit, a little bit more fear than anything else, really.
Well, and a couple more of these, just real quick before I get to the other one that I really want to talk about is they say that feeling like you're going to overpay regardless, so it's okay to overpay. That's a pitfall.
Hmm.
Players that you're going to switch positions with, that you're going to ask to do something else, that's kind of a pitfall. Let me go get this guy and move him to safety if he's a corner or whatever the case may be. That's a pitfall. And then they said valuing physical traits over mental capacity is a pitfall. We've seen the Cowboys do that when we talk about the mental capacity and how Christian Parker wants to change that. But two,
Yep.
the one or two that I want to talk about again is they talk about beware the veteran defender from a top defense. Like, if you think about that, you think
Mm,
that's contrarian. It's like, well, if they're a good defense and they're a veteran player on a good defense, then that would be a good find. But he's talking about it's usually the opposite. If you go, they spell out in here that if you go find a great player on a bad defense, that you usually have more success bringing them in than a veteran player on a good defense. Maybe not necessarily the greatest veteran player on that defense, but a couple of the other ones. And they point out like Seattle. Seattle has four or five guys available on their defense, so picking the right
mhm.
guy can be a bit of a challenge when it's veterans on a top defense. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I actually really like that, and I think there's a lot of truth to that probably, and I think for someone like, Reek Woolen, for example, he's the corner from Seattle. He's someone that when I watch play, it feels like maybe some of his deficiencies are being covered up by the fact that he's got the great safeties over the top or the really, tremendous pass rush where kinda liken it to a guard defender with a great big man behind him where I can be a little more aggressive because I know I got help behind me.
Yeah,
And so I think for Rick Woolen, it's the same thing. I can be super aggressive in these first 6 to 8 yards because I know the pass rush is gonna get there quickly, or then I've got the safeties behind me. So just to that point, yeah, I think any of those guys from Seattle kinda scare me a little bit because it's how much of it was the system versus how much of it was, just the individual player. We
yeah,
used to and most people now know I'm a huge Spurs fan. We used to joke all the time is anytime a Spurs player would leave to go get more money, it'd be like, well, his career's over because yeah, of course you got to go get the money and go ahead. But
yeah.
like they would make it like a season or two at most, and then they'd be out of the league because the system was just such a product of what was going on. And I think as a Cowboys fan, we kind of saw something similar in the '90s, in the early to mid '90s. Man, some of those guys would get some really big deals, but not be the same at all. So I actually really like that one. I think that makes a lot of sense. And just without even saying that, I was already kind of scared of the Seattle Defenders as potential free agent targets.
Well, here's the comparison they give. So if you're talking about Josh Jobe or Kobe Bryant or Reek Woolen for the Seahawks, contrast that with Alante Taylor from the Saints. The Saints were
The
a
Saints,
bad
yep,
team, but he was a good player, and he's a veteran player now.
yeah,
So that would be the contrast. Like, okay, let's weigh these options, and according to blogging with the
hmm
boys, you should be leaning towards Alante Taylor, which I think I might be anyway. But I think it was just very interesting how
100%.
they dissected that out. If you get a chance, go read it. It's 8 free agency mistakes the Cowboys need to avoid in 2026 from blogging with the boys. And the last one I want to highlight is ignoring why the old team let the player go. In the past, and most recent, maybe not most recent past, but traditionally, another man's trash is not another man's treasure in the NFL, as they say in this article. And it's so right. There's a reason the
Yeah,
other team is letting him go. Now, lately, that can change a little bit when you talk about the economics of the game and how much money is flowing towards different positions. There could be some cap casualties and no
yeah,
issues, right? And we've seen a few of them this year. They're making decisions based on who we're going to keep, and some good players get left behind. But traditionally, it says you can't ignore why the other team let him go and just sign him anyway. And so I think that's good advice. Now, a guy who flies in the face of that would be Jadeveon Clowney, which we just had a good year here, right?
hmm
So he's kind of not the norm. But you think guys like Dante Fowler, who we signed off a big season, he didn't produce. So I think that there's some truths, more truths to this than there are exceptions. And I just thought that was a very interesting fact that don't ignore why the old team let the player go.
yeah, 100%. And I'm just looking at the list here of the top free agents. Now, this is just by value. So total money of last year of 2025. And immediately, and not that these are bad players, but these are the top 5 from last year. And just as you're hearing the names, think about, all right, did I get what I paid for? To your point, Milton Williams, Sam Darnold, Will Fries, Dan Moore, Aaron Banks, Josh Sweat, and Stefan Diggs. Of those 7 names, Sam Darnold clearly had an impact. Um,
Diggs
Outside of
having an
that,
impact, yeah.
Josh Sweat was just straight. He did, but they just let him go.
Yeah.
Or the rumor is that he's going to be released. But he certainly had an impact. Um, but yeah, I think so. So to your point, like as you hear those names, it's like yeah, these are obviously good players. Not saying that they weren't worth the money, but were they difference making players in terms of going in and being a gravitational pull of impact to the team? So I love it. Zero argument. I think it makes a ton of sense.
Well, I think they even pointed out that the Cowboys had 10 former first round picks on their team from them, or mainly from other teams' first round picks, right? And so they
Yeah.
thought that maybe they could kind of recapture the glory of what made them a first round pick, and it just normally doesn't happen. So going into free agency, I hope they remember that and do what Blogging the Boys says, is stay away from those pitfalls. Um,
Yep.
Now look, if as we go into free agency and who we think the Cowboys are going to target, I think there's a lot of things that we have to consider when thinking about all these alternate routes that they could take. As we have said before, the Cowboys need help at every level of defense, whether it's D end, linebacker,
Mhm.
defensive backfield, or safety or corner. We know that we're losing 4 pass rushers off this team that we have not re-signed,
Mhm.
or potentially losing all 4 of them.
Right.
So, with everything that's happened and transpired so far, what do you think is the priority? And more specific, who would you go target if you were the Cowboys in the opening of free agency?
Yeah, so for me, the priority has to be, and exactly for what you mentioned, kind of the amount of talent that you're potentially losing there, would be edge. I would want an edge rusher. Now, Christian Parker says, we're going back to kind of a 3-4. You might have some kind of standing up edge linebacker, pass rusher types. So that could kind of skew what you're looking for a little bit. But just to keep it simple, I'll say edge is my number one priority. Um, I've mentioned it a few times here already. Trey Hendrickson would be my top choice there. And the only issue I have with Trey is probably what you have to spend. I think it's going to be, Khalil Mack just got 1 for 18. Um, I think Hendrickson's going to be a little bit more than that in terms of annual average. So you're probably looking at 2 or 3 for probably 22 to 25. Um, if he matches his kind of top production of his career, I think that's okay. But anyway, so I would say Trey Hendrickson would be kind of my top one. I actually like Phillips from Philly as my kind of second edge. Um, and then I wouldn't mind somebody like Joey Bosa, maybe somebody that might be a little bit cheaper, somebody that maybe you can get for maybe a bargain, and then you can start looking at that number 20 pick for TJ Parker or one of those sorts of types of players for edge.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree, but here's what I want to remind everybody out there. Whatever edge you put on this team has Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark next to him. So I think
Yep.
that if you put Trey Hendrickson there, oh my gosh, you think about what a
Right.
nightmare that could be for offensive lines, right? Even Jalen
Hmm.
Phillips, anybody with and I think I like Jalen Phillips just because he's a little bit younger and a little bit,
Yep.
more athletic, can do a few more things. But Trey
Hmm.
Hendrickson at the right price, no one's going to be upset about. Of course, everyone's going to be
Right.
going for Trey Hendrickson too, though. So there's that. There's
Sure.
competition. So then you look at a couple of
Yeah.
these other guys, second tier guys that you're talking about, and you said, I'm not sure about the Seattle guys. Well, you got 2 of them here, right? Or at
Yep.
least, yeah, you got Boye Mafe, right? Who is,
Hmm.
okay, maybe he doesn't have the production, but again, put him next to Williams and Clark, and maybe his production goes up, and you get him for a discount. You mentioned Joey
Yep.
Bosa, but you also have uh, Odafe Owe, right?
Yep.
From what is he from? Um,
The Chargers.
yeah, he went from the Raven. I was trying to remember Ravens to the Chargers. Now a free
To the
agent. So
Chargers, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I got myself confused there. But he's a little bit younger guy that has some talent and shown some spark, right? So if you can't
Yeah.
get Trey or Jalen, there are options there. Now, for me, I'm really, and if you listen to this show at all, I'm concerned about the linebacking core. Everyone's talking about
Yeah.
Overshown. Oh well, I'm not convinced that he will be out there for an entire year at the level he needs to
Yep.
be. I'm not so sure Christian Parker can get Shamar James to be serviceable. I don't know. I would hope so. So linebacker would be, and probably. I don't think that there's a glaring, first it's 1A and 1B to me with linebacker and edge rusher and defensive backs too. We might be in better shape there than we are at linebacker, but that's not saying a lot because of just where we
No.
are.
No.
And for me, uh, That's why I said don't give up hope if we didn't get Max Crosby because there are options out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the other thing that I'm kind of taking into account when I'm kind of ranking out my list of importance is also the kind of availability at these positions. Because it feels like if you can land one of these top 3 or 4 edge rushers, if you can land one of these top 3 or 4 linebackers, I'm with you. It's 1A, 1B. The DBs don't feel quite as, and I'm not, Jamil Dean is the top, DB free agent. Um, I honestly don't think Tampa's going to let him get away, if I'm being totally honest. But if he does, great. I think he's good. I like Jalen Watson a lot from Kansas City. But point being, the impact of the players at edge and linebacker in the free agent pool, I think objectively is considerably better than that of DBs.
It's
So
more
I want to
available, yeah.
spend the money where I can 100%. I want to spend the money where there's more fish in the sea, so to speak. And then to your point about the linebackers, man, I think for what I've seen, and I'm thinking about the Broncos, I'm thinking about the Eagles, like you've got to have that really solid linebacker sideline to sideline play conceivably. And I'm trusting Christian Parker is going to make the necessary adjustments, but they've got to have that, which is why you would think Overshown is just a tailor-made player for Christian Parker's defense. But the dude's got to stay on the field, man. But if he could, can you imagine what he would look like in that kind of system? Like, my goodness.
No, no doubt. I think it's well said that you talk about the stockpile, like what's available matters here. And I would
Yeah.
definitely want to land one of those defensive ends or edge rushers. Um, yes, definitely. But here's what I'll say. You have 3 tiers. You got the Trey Hendrickson, Jalen Phillips types. Then you got the older guys like Bradley Chubb, Joey Bosa that we've talked about that are available. And then you
Right.
got these guys with some flash that may have some upside potential with some production, which we talked about, Boye Mafe and Kaylavon Chason. He's a free
Yep.
agent, and then Odafe Owe. These names, man. I think I did pretty good there, but
Yeah.
normally I butcher these names.
No,
So
you
I
did good. Yeah. No,
so
it's
I
good.
th- I think that when you talk about and I want to mention Nick Harris of the Fort Worth Star Telegram, he put out a list of players that the Cowboys could be interested in, and on that list, I'll just read them: is Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, Alex Singleton from the Broncos, EJ Speed,
Mhm.
linebacker from the Texans, Draymond Jones from the Ravens at defensive end, and PJ Locke,
Mhm.
the defensive back, can play safety or corner,
And
I
the
think, for the
Broncos.
Broncos.
Yep.
Eric Stokes with the Raiders, the defensive back, and then safety Jalen Thompson from the Cardinals, and safety Reed Blankenship from the Eagles. And that is
Eagles. Yeah.
quite a nice list. And other guys who've been mentioned,
Yeah.
you've talked about Reek Woolen, and we talked about Alante Taylor. You talk about Quincy
Mhm.
Williams, the linebacker from the Jets, who's brother of Quinnen. Bobby Okirk, or however you say it, that one I probably couldn't get right, is available now that the Giants released him. You got Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker that was released, and Devin Lloyd at linebacker. But I think Devin Lloyd could be one of those. Let me boost my value by talking about the Cowboys players. I think that could be a pipe
Yep.
dream for us. But a lot of these names have been mentioned with the Cowboys. It speaks to what we talked about before. But man, if Nick Harris's list from the Fort Worth Star Telegram, and if you cross reference this with most people's list, these names are on it, right? If we could
Yeah.
land one of those linebackers and one of those DBs and get a
Mhm.
Hendrickson or oh my gosh, we everyone would have to calm down because it'd be Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, man, then that was literally you stole it from my mouth because if you get, like, any of the top 3 from any of these levels, and imagine if you sign one of the top 3 from each level, it's gonna be pandemonium, right? Everyone's going to be going crazy. I mean, people are already putting the Cowboys in a spot without having anything happen. Like Orlovsky has talked about them as potential Super Bowl favorites. There have been other people in the national media that have just kind of been like, "Look out for what the Cowboys are about to do." And I get it, right? That's all. It's what draws ratings. It what draws eyeballs to the programs. But I think ultimately the Harris list is phenomenal. I think a lot of it makes sense there. The only name that I didn't hear, and I've not really heard it a lot, and it could just be that Washington wants him to come back. But I'm kind of a sucker for a veteran linebacker, like the green dot kind of, hey, this guy's going to command everything. And somebody that's a free agent that had a phenomenal year, and that granted he's up there in age, is Bobby Wagner.
Mhm.
To me, Bobby Wagner is someone that if you can put him around all these young pieces, if you are going to really draft 2 first round guys on the defensive side of the ball, and if you could take him away from a division rival, like that would be the only other linebacking name I would throw in there. Probably 1 for 6, 1 for 7, something like that. Um, that would be very interesting to me. But yeah, I love the list, man, and it's just so hard not to be excited because I just want them to just sign a few of these guys. And I personally don't think Devin Lloyd is a pipe dream. I
Mm.
think he's going to command a lot of money, but I think he'll be worth it. And I expect they're going to make a real run at Devin Lloyd, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years for about 16 to 18 annually. I'd be more than happy to pay that for someone like
Wow,
Devin Lloyd.
that's interesting. I think okay, so we've talked about defensive end and who your top targets if you were the Cowboys and you would go after Trey Hendrickson first and Jalen Phillips second. What about
Yeah.
linebacker? Which one of these linebackers do you like you're mentioning Devin Lloyd now, so I'm
Yes.
assuming it's Devin Lloyd.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I would have 3 here. I would have kind of in its 3 different tiers almost. I've got Devin Lloyd. Although we've talked about the good player on a great defense, Nakobe Dean is still going to be there. Familiarity with Christian Parker. He's been a really good player, very productive. And then I would go Bobby Wagner slash Demario Davis. Like Wagner and
Mm,
Davis to me, and Demario Davis is from the Saints. It's 2 veteran guys, and just to be totally transparent, Wagner's 35 years old right now. Demario Davis is 37 years old right now. So obviously they've got some mileage, but I think those are 2 very savvy veterans. Now they've been very productive. I don't know that you need that same level of production, but obviously it would be nice. So yeah, for me it would be Devin Lloyd, Kobe Dean, and then Wagner slash Davis would kind of be the way that I would tier that out.
well, and I think the Cowboys have flirted with Bobby Wagner in the past free agency cycles, and it
Hmm.
just never worked out.
Yeah.
Imagine that. It always seems to always be the case with the
Yeah.
Cowboys. And a lot of people have Kobe Dean just already in a Cowboys uniform. It's like that's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
Maybe they're linking Christian
Yeah.
Parker with Kobe Dean, and that's a foregone conclusion. So that would be great. Any of those guys in the first tier, whether you put Quay Walker there, Kobe Dean, Devin Lloyd, and Bobby Wagner. I don't think I would go with Davis. I could be talked into Bobby Wagner for 1 or 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And then, but you look at the second tier, and that's interesting to me. Now, Tremaine Edmonds is interesting. Um,
Hmm.
Quincy Williams is interesting because you could probably get him a lot cheaper, and he's just like a depth guy, right? So if you get one of the top tier
Yep.
guys and then land one of these second tier guys, or get Sonny Styles at 12, if which is probably not going to happen, then you've really set yourself up to be in good shape. Going into the draft, where if you get two of these, you're going like, okay, well, we don't have to get a linebacker. If Sonny Styles isn't there at 12, which he probably won't be, then we're not in a panic,
Hmm.
right? We're not trying to reach. So I think that there is a lot of, and we haven't even mentioned. Herbig from the Steelers. It's available probably via trade if they want to make a trade for him.
Yeah,
Trade the 20th pick for him. I could be all in on that, right? Depending on who we get in free agents. But
yeah.
um, so what do you think about defensive back? Which defensive back, safety, corner, or either or both that you would really want them to go after?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a sucker for the bigger corners, which I think based on if you look at the profile of some of these guys that Christian Parker's has had, and Parker's kind of the DB whisperer. Someone like Jalen Watson, just pulling up his numbers here, he's 6'2", almost 200 pounds. That's a big corner, obviously. So I really like Jalen Watson. You mentioned Alontae Taylor. I actually really like Alontae Taylor.
Mhm.
I don't love spending big money on corners. And and especially the corner slash safety hybrids. I feel like Alontae Taylor is going to probably be up there a little bit in terms of in price range. So unfortunately, I think that may keep us away. But I really like Alontae Taylor. So for me, the top ones would be Jamil Dean. Clearly, is number one. I don't. Again, I don't really see that happening, but just he's a free agent. For the sake of argument, I'm going to say Jamil Dean one, Jalen Watson would be two, and then Alontae Taylor would be three. And I would be happy with any of them. The honorable mention would be Reed Blankenship, and again, that's more of the Christian Parker kind of familiarity.
Well, and going back to what the blogging the boys said, if you get a good player off of a bad defense, Jalen Thompson from the Cardinals is very intriguing to me. Their defense was
Yep.
ranked like 29th or something, but he's a good player, right? And so I would be, I like him. I like Alontae Taylor a lot in the DB um, world, and I probably would say, yeah, I don't mind Watson, but I haven't heard him linked here at all. Um, Jalen Watson and
Yeah.
or Jamel Dean I haven't heard him linked anywhere. So obviously he's going somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think I would be okay with Jalen Thompson, and I like PJ Locke from the Broncos, but he could be that player that's on the good defense
Of course.
that
Yeah.
they warned us about. So, but anyway, to me, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Just real
opportunity
quick
here.
on yeah, for sure. I'm so sorry about that. On Jalen Thompson, just because you mentioned him, and I know him pretty well. Just in terms of his games, and for whatever reason, I watched a lot of Cardinals. Not for whatever reason, I had some fantasy guys on the Cardinals team, so I watched a lot of Cardinals football last year. The one really interesting thing about Jalen is one, his age. He's only 27 years old. That's pretty good. And then two, he's coming off of a 3-year, $36 million contract, which means historically if you kind of use that with his age plus his production, which has not been phenomenal, but it's certainly not been bad. It's above average to good.
Hmm.
That probably means you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 years for somewhere between 11 and 14 million. I think for a player like that with that much upside, like that's very intriguing. And I didn't realize what his contract was over the last few years. So all of a sudden, Jalen Thompson's going to kind of skyrocket up my list just based on that.
You're welcome.
Um, because yeah, because from a price standpoint, man, that's very intriguing. And at some point, you can't just. I know Jerry's talking about busting the budget, but look, they're going to be smart here, and they should be. They absolutely should be. If I'm going to sign a couple of these guys in the second tier, and I can end up with 4 or 5 impact players versus 1 or 2 tier one players, give me that all day long. Like I would much rather the former than the latter.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I'm a little bit more greedy than you. I want two tier one free agents, and I want at edge. Give me one of those guys, Hendrickson or Phillips, and then at linebacker, I want a tier one guy. Give me one of those guys, and then with at DB, you can get a couple two tiers, two guys, and maybe I'm just thinking, hey, pay everybody like we've talked about before. It's not our money, so just pay everybody, right? We'll worry about it later, like Howie Roseman does, right? Your idol. So I think for me, I want two top tier guys out of this free agency, period here. I want two top tier guys in whatever positions, whether it's DB, linebacker, or defensive end. Two out of those three, we got to get top tier guy. I know that could be me wishful thinking, but I think they can really do it based on what the numbers go for. What we're looking at here, and if it's Trey Hendrickson, I'm just sitting here just salivating. I was this close to getting Max Crosby going. Can you have Max Crosby, Quinnen Williams, and Kenny Clark, and obviously Osa would have been part of that trade. But man, that is just unbelievable, just to think about. So for me, I want two top tier guys, and then maybe one or two top two or top or second level to third level guys that can go in for depth because we need a lot of defense. And let's bust the budget on defense, Jerry. You said you were going to do it, but again, they have to agree to come here. They have to agree to the money, right? They have. It's not like, well, we can offer it all day long. If nobody agrees to come here, then we're stuck out like Chuck. We're stuck like Chuck, just out here wishing and hoping. One other thing I want to mention about the DBs is you still got Minka Fitzpatrick who's available, whether you have to trade for him or whether he's going
Uh-huh.
to be released and become a free agent. So that's something we can't
Yep.
can't really, just forget about.
No, absolutely not. And I think those are the kind of there's always we're talking about all these players that are available, the free agents that we know are going to exist, these cap casualties that nobody's seen coming, these players made available via trade that nobody knows is going to be, the non-existent ones that are out there. Um, you know, those are going to happen. And especially as we get closer to the draft, you got the draft night stuff, you've got the day before pre-draft things. Um, I think Minka would be a phenomenal addition. Again, I'm kind of a sucker for give me one or two of these veteran guys, especially ones that are still highly productive. He's going to be 30 years old next season. That's fine. No issues with that whatsoever. So no, I completely agree, man. And we've seen it already. We've seen it with a couple of these trades. You talk about Trent McDuffie. There's going to be some players available that you didn't know were available.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on this, as we said a lot early on in the Dead Jeff show, and we put the bows away, I guess. To put a bow on this, I think realistically, you're probably going to get one top tier guy and then two
Yeah.
second tier guys, like you said. That's probably more realistic. But again, I want it all, Jerry. I want it all, Jerry. You've disappointed us for so many years. Give it to us this year. Give it all to us. Um, and you mentioned something about trades, the trade activity. And man, I got to
Yeah.
tell you, there have been a lot more trades, seems like this year and last year than in recent times. It's like in the
Yeah.
NFL, people just didn't trade very much. But man, the activity you talk about last year and then even in the last week or 10 days, I don't know if you've got them pulled up there and we can run through the trades that have
Yep.
happened, but there's all kinds of people still available for trade too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I do have them all here. Just in the last since the Super Bowl, theoretically, there have been 11 transactions. Now, remember, transactions, for example, Zaire Franklin and the Kobe Wooden trade, which is from Green Bay and the Colts, that technically is two transactions. They both acquired players. So just kind of keep that in mind. But regardless, you're talking about, and I say since the Super Bowl, it's really since February 25th. So it's only been about a week. In a week worth of movement, there's been some pretty big moves, and I mentioned it briefly there with Trent McDuffie, and just the numbers on that is the Rams get Trent McDuffie from the Chiefs, and the Chiefs get back the number 29 pick in this year's draft, so a first rounder in 26, a fifth and sixth rounder in 26, and a third in 27. So a monster haul for Kansas City, a first, a fifth, a sixth this year, and a third next year for a top five corner, certainly in Trent McDuffie. So it's not like the Rams are getting scraps or anything, but that's a big haul for KC, man.
Well, but the Rams are going to have to pay McDuffie soon, right? What's his contract
Yeah.
status?
So right now McDuffie is earning 13.6 million in 26. But it's his last year. So the expectation is that he's going to be extended. And then if you look at the top cap rankings right now for a cornerback, he's probably going to command somewhere in that 24 to 30 million dollar range. That's big money, man. That's big money.
Well, and that's why the Cowboys were not involved in that. They just can't pay a corner
Yeah,
that much
right.
money because we need so many of
No.
them. So yeah, yeah, what are the other what are the other trades that you want to go through? Is there any more?
Yeah, so obviously we mentioned it multiple times. I will just bring it out there just because I don't want us to talk about trades and be like they didn't talk about Crosby. The Ravens do get Max Crosby, and they send back to the Raiders the 14th pick in this year's draft and 2027 first round pick. So they get two ones for Max Crosby. And look, good for the Raiders, man. They are all in on the Mendoza era. It is very clear. I saw somewhere that they have freed up over $100 million in cap space. Um, I think that is going to be a very aggressive rebuild. I think they're going to be huge spenders in free agency, and they are stockpiling the war chest. So, good for the Raiders and
Well,
your
they
boy
need people
Mendoza.
that can protect Mendoza because that's been the Achilles
Yeah.
heel of that team has been their offensive line. It's been terrible.
Yeah, for sure. One of the early ones was the Houston Texans getting involved in the running back market. They got David Montgomery from the Detroit Lions. In return, they send back a guard, Juice Scruggs, as well as a 26 fourth and a 27 seventh rounder. So they get a guard, they get a fourth rounder this year, a seventh rounder next year for David Montgomery.
Well, and the Texans, if their running game has struggled, but they found a little something with Woody Marks there towards the end of the season. So you put Montgomery with Marks, and I know that means Joe Mixon's out, but Joe Mixon can't stay
Yep.
healthy. So I like this move a lot for the Texans. This is a sneaky good move. David Montgomery still got some tread on the tire. He's been splitting time with Gibbs there in Detroit, so he hasn't been overused.
Hmm.
So I like this move for the
Yep.
Texans a lot.
No, I do too, man. And if you think about, and this is a little bit of early Dak in CJ Stroud. CJ was really good when he had a solid running game, like that year with Joe Mixon, and they're kind of all over the place. And I think it was Pierce who was backing up Mixon then was just able to spell him, and it was a good thing for Stroud to have play action working really well. I fully expect that this is what they're trying to get back to. Um, just giving Stroud some breathing room, giving him a little bit of ability to make some plays. So I agree with you completely, man. I think this is a great move, very savvy for Houston.
Yeah, for sure.
The other one I wanted to get into was the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills get DJ Moore from the Chicago Bears. So they also get back a 27 fifth rounder. So the Bills get DJ Moore and a 27th fifth rounder. And Chicago gets the second rounder this year, pick number 60 from Buffalo. So again, talking about one of those kind of sneaky good moves. This is kind of huge for Buffalo, man. I mean, obviously that division is getting better and better. We'll see what the Jets do, but Miami's going to make some really aggressive moves. Obviously, New England is has just completely reinvented themselves. Buffalo's got to get some talent in there, and I think this is a great pickup.
Yeah, I know there was some talk about would AJ Brown be traded to the Bills, right?
Yeah,
And maybe that still could happen. But see, DJ Moore,
could.
it's kind of a tale of a few seasons. Like when he first got traded to the Bears, you were like, hey, and I think that was in the Bryce Young deal, right? So,
Bryce Young, that's right.
so when he you like we felt bad for DJ Moore because he had Caleb Williams as his quarterback and Justin Fields, and he couldn't get the couldn't get any throws, and then last year it's like they didn't really use DJ Moore enough. Caleb Williams and him just, I guess, didn't have a whole lot of chemistry. Now he came up big in some big moments,
Yeah.
but I like DJ Moore a lot, and putting him with Josh Allen and those tight ends they have in Buffalo, this should stretch the field for him. And I would hope that the Buffalo's not done with their receiving core, but I like the Buffalo Bills and I like DJ Moore, so naturally I like this deal.
Yeah, for sure. 2023 was, according to PFF, 2023 DJ Moore was an 89, had a 89 grade, then 73 and 24 and 67 and 25. So he's kind of seemingly regressed each year. This is a 28-year-old receiver that's 5'11, so he doesn't really play above the rim, so to speak.
It's not his game.
I think he could still have, yeah, he could still have good years in front of him. And with Josh Allen in that offense, you know, just look out, man. I agree with you completely. You might see DJ Moore have a top 10, top 12 type receiving year. Really, really good move, especially if they get another great receiver there.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I know what they gave up a second, you said?
That's it. Just a second. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, but it's a end of the second round second. So and it's in this draft, so it's kind of like a third, right? Was it this draft or 27?
Third. Yeah. Yeah, this draft. Nope, this
Okay.
draft. You're
So
right.
yeah, so that's not bad at all. So I mean, do I need to remind you what we gave up for Jonathan Mingo? That was a fourth, right? So,
No, you don't. Please don't.
but we did
Please
give up
don't.
a third for Pickens, and look how that turned out, right? So,
That's true. That's
so
true.
anyway, any other trades
No,
that
that's
you
it.
want to talk about? Okay,
Yeah,
all good.
there's a few other ones. There's the yeah, there's a few other ones, but no, those are the big ones for sure.
Yeah, so that's increased activity, like you said, in the last 10 days. It's just been crazy. And
Yep.
we may see a few more before or on draft night. So we'll stay tuned for that. I think before we head out, there's a couple things that I want to bring up in other news that's related to the Cowboys. You see where when Jerry Jones gave that interview, I think a lot of people, I guess you could say it's a mixed reaction to Jerry. It's just Jerry being Jerry, Jerry being charming. Well, we picked out a few things that we thought were different and that we were liking, but there's an old cantankerous guy who didn't like anything Jerry said. And matter of fact, predict the Cowboys would go 6-11 next season because of what Jerry Jones was peddling on the bus. And that's old Skip Bayless. And look, I find Skip Bayless entertaining, but some of these takes, I just don't know how if I can take him seriously. But he disagreed with us and anybody else who thought it was a positive interview for Jerry. He refused to see that, and he just went to the negative. And the same stuff Jerry's been peddling. That's what Skip saw. But what did you think about Skip going off? I mean, like going off. I mean, that's like a few weeks in a row now because, he went off on Micah, right? Micah's reaction to him, and now he's
Hmm.
going off on Jerry's interview. Maybe should we be worried about Skip, or is he right?
No, we should definitely be worried about Skip. It's the kind of the quote coming out of it from Skip is Jerry Jones has officially become a crazy old kook or crazy old I think he said
Coot.
crazy old kook. That coot there, yeah, that's very rich coming from a crazy old coot.
Be careful, dude.
I just
Coot.
don't.
It's Coot.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said. Coot. Crazy old coot. The the idea that Skip Bayless is gonna go out and just and I get it financially, like one of the things that he was really harping on was like this whole restructuring of contracts and as we've talked about many times before, kicking the can down the road. I don't understand why because Jerry does something, it's the end of the world when like 99% of the league is doing the exact like this is just the way that these contracts have become structured. It's what teams do. Deshaun Watson's contract just got restructured for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Like what are we talking about here? Like it's ratings draw. It's a magnifier. I get it, but no, we should absolutely not be worried about Skip Bayless being right on this take at all.
Yeah. Skip professes to be a big Cowboy fan, and that's like us. But he's very, very quick to jump on the bandwagon, and he's very, very quick to jump off the bandwagon. So you just don't know when to take him seriously. I
Hmm.
think he truly believes what he says. I don't think he's making stuff up like maybe he did back in the first take days just to be contrarian with Stephen A. But I think for
Right.
me, I like Skip Bayless. I find him entertaining, but I would have to file it there. And I don't know if you compile anyone's record if you put up predictions and debates and okay, let's put up this record against this record. I don't think any of us do phenomenally well. So that's not fair to go, well, Skip, your record sucks when you debate, or Skip, what we hear all the time, you didn't play sports, so why should we believe you or whatever. But Skip was around this team and around this town for a long time, and there's people that respect him and there's people that don't. And I'll just say this, I'm trying to be optimistic with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. If we strike out in free agency, then maybe I'll lean towards Skip being right, right? And we'll be saying, "Hey, he told us so," and if he wants to tell us that, then great. But I think it can go either way, and and Skip just wants to take a hard line and give opinions, and that's what this business is about, giving your opinions when you have strong ones. But I just find it hard to believe you have strong opinions about everything, right? I mean, that's just manufactured to me. But I like Skip. I listen to Skip a lot, but you got to know when the hype is the hype and the substance is the substance.
Hey man, I'm right there with you. And just, and I agree with you, Skip can be very entertaining. But I'm gonna give you, and just because we're talking, I'm gonna give you the three worst Skip takes of all time. Just we're having some fun with it. Cardale Jones should have been drafted instead of Dak Prescott. That's one. Tim Tebow had more upside than Andrew Luck.
Oh,
And then the worst one, and this is universal. I've known about this one forever. Johnny Manziel will be a bigger name in Cleveland than LeBron James.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it's kind of a little bit it's a little bit unfair to do that to him, but man, that's bad. And that's what I mean is when you put yourself out there and
Yeah.
you have such hard fast, feelings about everything, you're just trying to
Yeah.
entertain.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that's, I'm sure he'll take it in jest because over that, what, 3 decades, 4 decades of sports journalism, you're gonna have some misses. We'll be fair to Skip, and a couple of ones that he hit correctly was prior to the season. He said that the Warriors would break the record. Now he also said they would win the championship, which,
They got
kind
cheated
of
out of
sort of
that
got
championship.
50-50 there. Yeah, he got yeah.
Draymond's suspension
So,
cost him that
there's
championship.
there's 100% right. But so he's got some good ones too, but to your point, man, I mean, when you're gonna be so hot and so cold with any of these takes, it's gonna catch up to you. And especially when you traverse so many different areas and so many different things, people are gonna be able to go back 10 years later and say, "You really thought Manziel was gonna be a bigger star than LeBron James?" And it's just ludicrous now in hindsight, of course.
Yeah, like on this show, you've got a couple bad ones, and I got a bad one when I said that the Mavericks would finish ahead of the Spurs in the standings. That was an all-time bad one. Of course, you know, we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. You said Dylan Harper was better than Cooper Flag. I don't think that's going to age well, and but there's still time for that one, I guess. But so we all have
Yeah.
hits and misses, and but hey, when you're doing Knicks picks, you were stellar. So there are some things that we do well and we don't do well. Now, couple of things before we get out of here, real quick. I am concerned about the Dak news that we got this weekend about him and his fiance splitting, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's going to affect him on the field, and I don't know what that's all about. I don't get into gossip, I don't get into TMZ
Yeah.
stuff too much, but this man, I don't want it to affect our quarterback who was in a good place and heading. He looked great last year. He physically was in shape. He mentally was sharp. I just don't want this affecting his mental. I don't really want to get too much into it, but what did you think of when you heard that news?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you get into that stuff on the off the field side of things, you really look at the character of the player, and you hate it for his family, you hate it for his kids, and all that kind of stuff. And just genuinely, we're both fathers. It's something that we've talked about before. So really hate it from that side of things. Just to be a little bit personal there. What I
Yeah.
will say is, of all the things I'm going to question with Dak Prescott, his mental and his leadership and his ability to show up in tough times is not one of them. As much as I hate it for him and I hate it for his family, I it's an area that I genuinely would not. If anything, I think he probably rises above this. Just to be totally honest.
Maybe he uses it motivation, but way to go, mate! Well, you made me look like an insensitive jerk
Yeah.
because I didn't look at his family and
Yeah.
what it meant to him personally. I'm just worried about it how it affects the Cowboys. So I will take that one on the chin because that's how I deserve that one. But yeah, you don't want anybody to go through this kind of situation. And maybe there's still hope that they'll work it out. But I do agree with you. It was just a little pause for me, but then I realized who Dak is
Yeah.
and the kind of man he has shown and proven himself to be. And I think he will, power through this and use it as motivation to be, a better father for his daughters. So I'm not that concerned, but it was just a little pause when it came up. And coincidentally, sounds like Luca's going through the same thing with his significant
Yeah.
other. So maybe I mean, marriage is tough, guys. It's just tough, and Dak hadn't even got to that point yet, although they've been basically married over this time period. But I hope the best for
Hmm.
them in that situation. Um, and I'm a jerk for bringing it up. Thanks, Nick, for pointing that out to everybody out there. All right. I think that's it today. We'll end on that note. So listen, I love I love talking Cowboys draft free agency. Again, it's like Christmas Day and my birthday all rolled together. So I'm very excited over the next couple days, and I just hope that we can land some of these top tier guys that we've been talking about today. So to everyone, thank you for being a part of this show. It's Dead Jeff Show number 25. Please like, subscribe, and interact with us. Let us know if you're digging the show or if you hate the show. You can let us know that too. But thank you for being a part of this one. And until next time, peace.